And welcome to Unchained at Last's parallel event to the Commission on the Status of Women. As you know, CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women, is the world's largest annual gathering on gender equality and women's empowerment. So by being here, it means you care about these issues. So thank you, and thank you for being here. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you. And those of you who have been at Unchained events, you know we always start right on time. And we have Ashley, sure, come up and join us. And a special shout out to Christine Brown, our longtime board member who's in the audience. And Alex, how many people do we have joining us on Zoom? All right, and we're gonna talk soon about where everybody is from. But first, I want to start by introducing myself. I am Frady Reese. I am the founder and executive director of Unchained at Last, which is a survivor-led nonprofit or NGO working to end forced and child marriage in the United States through both direct services and systems change. And I founded Unchained out of my own traumatic experience. I grew up in New York City, not far from here in Brooklyn, in a fundamentalist religious community where, unfortunately, forced marriage remains the norm. And my family married me off when I was 19 to a stranger with very little input from me. During my engagement, I was subjected to a virginity exam, a gynecological examination to confirm that my hymen was intact. The stranger I was forced to marry turned out to be violent, something that I learned exactly 1 week after my wedding. But I was trapped. I had, first of all, no sexual or reproductive rights. I was required to have unprotected sex with my husband on my wedding night and on a monthly basis thereafter. A lifetime of rape. And these rapes were timed every month for when I was ovulating, for a very obvious reason. My first child was born 11 months after my wedding, and pretty soon I had 2. I love my daughters, but I did not consent to having them. I also had no financial rights. I was not allowed to have my own bank account, credit card, or my own money. I was required to remain financially dependent on my husband. And I had limited legal rights. In that community where I grew up, a man is allowed to divorce his wife, but I, as a woman, did not have the legal right to end my own marriage. So I was trapped for 15 years in this abusive forced marriage. And when I finally managed to escape on my own, my family retaliated by shunning me. They declared me dead. And still until today, more than 15 years later, consider me dead. And that's why I founded Unchained at Last, the only organization in the world with the mission of ending forced and child marriage here in the United States through direct services and systems change. Thank you. And before I talk more about what we do at Unchained, and we have turn it over to our panelists who are all forced marriage survivors, you've heard a little bit about me, so I want to hear a little bit about all of you in the room here today and those of you who are with us on Zoom. I want to know where you are from. So if you're in the room, if you could take your orange card that we hope a team member handed to you when you walked in. If you don't have one, let an Unchained team member know. And if you're on Zoom, put it in the Q&A. Just quickly tell us where you're from. And if you're putting on the orange card, write large block letters so that we can easily see where you are from. And one of the beautiful things about these CSW events is that we get a global audience, people from all over. Of course, if you're from New York, you're still very special and very welcome here. All right, Alex, where are people on Zoom from? Okay. California, Atlanta, Michigan, New Jersey. Shout out to New Jersey. Okay. Insert a joke, obviously, here about New Jersey. Yes. Indiana, Pennsylvania, Missouri. All right. Becca and I just got back from Missouri. Where? Vermont. All right. Anyone from overseas? Oh, we have in the room. We have Washington State is still part of the United States. Okay. It's far away though. So a lot of US. Okay. What about in the room here, Sam? What are you seeing on the cards on that side of the room? Australia. Who's from Australia? Okay. That was a very long flight. Thank you. Where's that? Sweden. Okay. I'm a big fan of Stockholm. California, Connecticut, New York. Which special part of New York? Long Island. Sam does love Long Island. Okay. Yeah. Where do we have London? We got London on Zoom. Someone with a really nice accent. Okay. Colorado. New Zealand. All right. That was the longest flight. Well, you could fight it out with Australia. Okay. And what about on your side of the room? Canada. Okay, that's overseas. Ish. What was after Canada? More New Zealand. Do you two know each other? I thought all people in New Zealand knew each other. Okay, but you can meet now. Thailand, Zambia, Mali, India. Okay, so a lot of overseas. More Sweden. Stockholm, one of my favorite cities in the world. What do we have right here? A lot of Canada. I see Texas, Virginia, Tampa, Florida. All right. And so I'm glad we have some nice weather today, so you can't complain. Madrid. Nice. Okay, so a very global audience. Wherever you are from, and we have people from everywhere in here. Where is that? We have one. Armenia. Nice. Hootie's a big fan. Yes. All right. Wherever you are from, chances are forced and child marriage are a problem where you come from, because these are global problems. So let's do some definitions. A forced marriage means one or both parties do not give full free consent. It can happen at any age. It happened to me at 19, and you'll hear from the panelists about the different ages it happened to them. Now, forced marriage brings myriad other abuses and harms, as you heard from my own story. In many cases, the survivors we work with at Unchained, and what we're seeing again and again, is a forced marriage means a loss of sexual and reproductive rights, with survivors forced to endure pregnancy, childbirth, child rearing without their consent. It often means, like with me, a loss of financial rights, a lifetime of financial dependence and domestic servitude. It is considered a harmful practice that particularly impacts girls and women. It is considered a human rights abuse. It is considered a form of modern slavery. Child marriage means that one or both parties are under age 18. And it too is a human rights abuse and a harmful practice. And child marriage, in fact, is considered by the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, it is considered to be a form of forced marriage. Because minors have limited legal rights, they are unable to give full free consent to marriage. So when they marry, that is considered a forced marriage. So this leads me to my next question. And this one is going to be a multiple choice. On Zoom, you're going to use the poll to answer. And in the room, you're going to hold up the cards that you have. Based on which answer you think it is, you're going to hold up the card. Here's the question. Which of the following harmful practices did 193 countries, including the United States, promise to end by year 2030 under United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 5.3? And 5.3 was part of SDG 5, which is the very noble goal of achieving gender equality by year 2030. So under that 5.3, what did basically the whole world promise to eliminate? Is it A, the blue card for forced, if you think it's forced marriage? B is the purple card if you think it's child marriage. C, hold up the pink card if you think that it's female genital mutilation and cutting. And D, the yellow card if you think it's all of the above. So I'll repeat that. A is for forced marriage, B is child marriage, C, female genital mutilation or cutting, D, all of the above. All right. We have pretty much a lot of consensus here in the room, but what are we seeing on Zoom, Alex? All of the above. All right. Everyone online thinks it's all of the above. All right. What about in the room here, Sam? On your side of the room? All of the above. All of the above. A lot of harmful practices to eliminate gender equality. I mean, to eliminate gender equality, to achieve gender equality. That was not a Freudian slip. I definitely want to achieve gender equality. And what about your side of the room? All right, we have a very educated audience. And no offense to the one person who held up a C, because that's correct too. But it is all of the above. The whole world, including the US, has promised to end all of these abuses by year 2030, because we all recognize we cannot achieve gender equality if we are still allowing these harmful practices. All right, ready for the next question? Okay. So there's another multiple choice. Again, on Zoom, you're going to use the poll. In the room, you're going to hold up the cards. Is forced marriage a crime in the United States? Since we have promised to end forced marriage by 2030, is it a crime here in the United States? So hold up your A or blue card if you think the answer is yes. Hold up your B or purple card if you think the answer is only in some states. Hold up your C or pink card if you think it's only if it involves a child. And hold up your D or yellow card if you think the answer is no, forced marriage is not a crime in the US. So I'll repeat. A is yes, B is only in some states, C only if it involves a child, D is no. All right, Alex, what are people on Zoom saying? A little bit, some no, and mostly only in some states. Some no, some only in some states. Okay, what about Sam, this side of the room? Looks like a lot of only in some states. They're not clear which states they're referring to, but okay. And I also see over here a couple of C's for only if it involves a child. All right, what about Becca's side of the room? So mostly B's, some C's, some A's. So most people think it's only in some states, but some people think it's yes, it's a crime, and some think only if it involves a child. The answer is only in some states. And when I say some, it's not a whole lot, it's 9. There are 9 US states where forced marriage is a specific crime. And by the way, these criminal statutes do not appear to have been written to address forced marriage. They were written, seems more for human trafficking or other purposes, but they can be used to punish or prevent a forced marriage. And by the way, in all of those 9 states, child marriage is legal, and that creates a workaround because we know, as I just said, child marriage is a form of forced marriage and it is legal. So we have here basically very few laws and policies in place in the United States to prevent forced marriage, to punish forced marriage, to address forced marriage, very little research even to acknowledge it, to define it, or even to talk about, or even to determine how often it happens. That's why we are here today. At Unchained at Last, we are determined to make sure the United States keeps its promise to end forced marriage and child marriage by year 2030. And we do that through using a 2-prong approach. We do direct services and systems change. On the direct services side, we provide crucial, comprehensive, wraparound, often life-saving services to survivors as they are escaping forced marriage. And to date, we have been able to provide these services to more than 1,000 survivors. And then at the same time, we push relentlessly for social policy and legal change because we would love nothing more than to end forced and child marriage, put ourselves out of business, and go and get a much less depressing job. So what we do on the systems change side is, first of all, for child marriage, we are going state by state to make sure that every US state makes the marriage age 18, no exceptions. As recently as 2017, child marriage was legal in all 50 states. And in the last few years, we have helped to end child marriage in 11 US states. The most recent victory was just a week or two ago in Washington. And thank you. And if you're doing the math, it means we have only 39 states to go. And on the forced marriage side, what we are also doing is we have partnered with Columbia University researchers on a first of its kind study. Oh, it's more than a study. It's a research and action project to study and combat forced marriage, forced marital sex, and forced parenthood in the United States through a case study of the Orthodox Jewish community in New York City. That's the community where I was forced to marry and subjected to these other abuses. And that's where we're starting. It's a 3-year study. And by the time we're done, we hope very much to have policy recommendations that we can implement at the national, state, and local levels. Thank you. But getting back to why we're here today with these survivors, we are here today, all of it, to give a platform to forced marriage survivors to tell the world, we have experienced forced marriage. We have experienced the myriad harms that come with this horrific human rights abuse. And we know the United States promised to end it by the end of this decade. And we are going to hold the United States to that promise. So let me introduce you to the panel. We have here some of my favorite people in the world. Here's Hootie Gudelekian, who happens to be not only a survivor, but and she gets a plus, she has fans wherever she goes, Hootie. And she also is the past chair of NGO CSW New York, which is the group that organizes this entire event, all the parallel events. And Hootie, did you say there were 14,000 people registered this year? So Hootie hasn't gotten much sleep recently. She spends months organizing this. She's also Unchained's United Nations coordinator. And then we have Devinder Kaur, who is a survivor, also the author of a book called Forced to Marry Him, which I highly recommend that all of you read about her experience. And then we have one of my closest friends, Connie Getter, who is a survivor, also a scholar in residence at Footsteps, which is one of our sister organizations. And I hope Connie will talk more about what Footsteps does. And then I am very, very honored to introduce our moderator today, who I'm sure you all know, Ashley Flowers. I'm sure you know Ashley as the voice and the mind behind really hard-hitting true crime podcasts, including Crime Junkie, and there is another one also, the Deck Investigates. That's right. You hear the voice, and now you recognize that you're like, oh, that's Ashley Flowers. But Ashley is the founder and chief creative officer at AudioChuck, which is a media company. We wish all media companies were like this. It has given in the last 6 years $7.5 million to charity, including very generous support to Unchained At Last. AudioChuck also works globally to fund DNA testing, to solve cold crimes, to locate missing people. They're doing extraordinary work. Ashley joins us all the way from Indiana, and we're so grateful to have you here today. Thank you. If you have any questions while the panel is talking, please write it on your orange card and hand it to an Unchained team member. The Unchained team members are wearing these white name tags, so that's how you know who they are. Oh, and online, put it in the Q&A.
All right. Well, thank you each for being here. We're here to talk about forced marriage. I know revisiting trauma isn't easy in its own when you're doing it in private, and it's certainly not easy to do it in a room full of people. But I'm really grateful that you're willing to help us understand what the problem is, help us understand what we can do to be a solution to the problem. So would you each start by giving us just a minute or two, kind of introducing us to your story and who you are?
Hi, everyone. I'm Devinder Kaur. I'm from the United Kingdom, born and raised there. My parents are from the Punjab, India, and they moved to England when they were really young. I was engaged at the age of 14 by being just shown a picture of a boy that I had to get married to. I was denied an education because my mom said, there's no need for you to go to college. You're getting married when you turn 18. This leads to a cycle of poverty because when we're denied our rights to an education, it's not easy to get any type of job. And then finally, when you put yourself through, through college, it takes, it takes years, especially if you have a family and you have responsibilities and a full-time job. So when I graduated at age 40, then I faced stiff competition from others who were in their 20s. And so also it's age discrimination at that age. So it really does not help to put us in a cycle of endless poverty. My brother was a year older, yet he didn't have to get married first. If he had wanted to get his education, it wouldn't have been denied to him. And he didn't have to do housework, cooking and cleaning like we did. So it's a different level for boys than it is for girls. Boys are valued more. And we all have to speak up about this. And I ran away when I was 18 because I realized I didn't want to get married to the stranger that I did not know. I was tricked into going back home when I made a phone call 2 months later because I was really homesick. And I went back home, and then the guilt and pressure were put on me to marry the boy. And I was flown to Denmark where the marriage happened. I wrote my book, Forced to Marry Him, A Lifetime of Tradition and the Will to Break It, because I want to spread awareness that this is happening. It's not just happening in India and Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan. It happens in the UK, where it happened to me. It happens in Denmark. It happens here in America. And we have to spread awareness. It's a human rights abuse. It's human trafficking. We're used for our citizenship. We're used for our services, whether it's cooking and cleaning. And this is not right. And, so it's human trafficking, like I said, and we all have to be part of ending it. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Khani Getter. I come from the ultra-Orthodox community in Muncie, New York, which is about 10 miles north of the city, maybe 15. I married my ex-husband when we were both 17 years old. And when I left at the age of 23, I had 3 children under the age of 5 and no family support. I was disowned, and I am grateful for the strangers and angels that showed up along the way. In 2013, Footsteps, that has been around since, I believe, 2003, but was only doing educational work from 2003 till then, recruited me to help them build our family justice program. And our family justice program is the program that talks about and helps and collaborates with Unchained on this, we call it the white paper that Columbia will be writing so that we can bring it into courts. When you are taught from a very young age that your life is going to look a certain way, most of us do not know that there are choices. And forced marriage is not that someone holds a gun to us. It is not that someone says something to us if you don't. It is the expectation that community puts on human beings about the trajectory of their life and their bodies. It's that simple. Forced marriage is subtle, sometimes not as subtle, but most of the time it is a subtle indoctrination from a very young age. And at Footsteps, we work with both men and women because we are all survivors. And as someone, they asked me to speak about LGBTQ, so I'm just going to say really quickly, as someone who identifies as non-binary, my body was used in a way that I never, ever consented and never, ever wanted with someone that I didn't want to have children with. And that is across the board. It is one thing when you come from a community that tells you you're going to learn to love the person you're with, but no one tells you, and if you're gay, you're never going to learn how to be attracted to them. And that's a crime to them as well as to yourself.
Thank you for sharing that. That is really emotional. So as we already learned, my name is Huri Gedelekian. I am Armenian from Beirut, Lebanon. And my story is a little bit different because most people who know my story go, what are you complaining about? My, my marriage was a joyous marriage, but I was 14. I was introduced to my uncle Vartan at 13. Our community that I knew, the community I knew in my country house and in this apartment that we lived in Beirut, I had never seen it. None of my middle school and high school friends were married that young. Yet this was introduced to me and said, you know, nice family. And my parents were not the ones who arranged it. They weren't 100% for it. It was Uncle Vartan's family. And I had a wonderful wedding. I thought, you know, I'll make this work. And for the longest time, I actually did not realize how wrong this was. It took me 20 years to figure out that this was not right for me. He was a kind man. He was not abusive. I did not experience some of the things that my my friends are talking about here. Yet in hindsight, the reason I am doing what I'm doing is because it is wrong. It is wrong for any person, first of all, under the age of 18 to be forced to, and also at any age to be engaged in a situation where it is not your choice. You had, like you said it so perfectly, when you just don't even have the capacity to wrap your head around what is this about. And it's one of the reasons why I really connected with Frady, because like I said, in my community, I just didn't know anybody else who was doing that. And then when I first found out that the same thing happens in the United States, because I ended up being very lucky enough to immigrate to the United States and made a great life for myself. I have amazing life and family and everything right now. But the bottom line is that I was shocked to hear that the United States was a place that was also doing this. So we must put an end to it.
So Hudi, you kind of spoke to what led you to advocacy work, but I would love to hear from Devinder and Hani. What led you? Because I could understand you experienced such a trauma, and I know rebuilding your life wasn't easy. And no one would fault anyone for just focusing on themselves and their family and you know, their own healing. But you both have chosen to be real advocates. And so what was the decision for you guys? What led to that?
It's just realizing that we have to speak up and be, you know, part of like just raising awareness about this, because if we don't speak up, how will people know about the pain and suffering that we've experienced? So I find that, yeah, we have to do that.
Good question. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And I ran from it for a long time. But it was what I was called to do over and over. People were like, hey, Khani, can you speak about this? Hey, can you talk about that? Hey, like there kept being this request because nobody else was doing it. It was the same reason why 20 years ago, when in the Orthodox community, nobody was talking about LGBTQ issues, I went into synagogues to talk, not because I wanted, but because nobody else was doing it. And there's this, I'm just smiling because you and I literally had breakfast together and you said, what kept you in your tradition all these years? And it's because there's some meaning in there. And so for me, there's this saying, in Ethics of Our Father, if there is in a place where there is no person, you be the person. And there was no other person. And so I just kept showing up because there was no one else. And then all of a sudden I was recruited to do a job doing it. And then my practice filled up with people who were leaving fundamental religions. It wasn't a choice. There was no one else doing the work. And so you show up to do it.
Well, thank all of you for showing up to do it. In showing up day after day, what do you find to be the most rewarding part? And what do you find to be the most challenging part?
The most challenging part is a saying that I once read, which is, anything worth doing will not be done in your lifetime. So that's the most challenging part. The most rewarding is seeing someone, I've been doing this long enough, and seeing someone 5, 10 years out, and the joy in their eyes, and the joy in their children, and the swing in their, like the, I don't know, like the way they walk and talk and move. And you're like, I was a tiny part of that journey. I'm so grateful.
So I'd say for myself, the most rewarding part is like when I hear people say, I didn't know that children are getting married here under the age of 18. It's like when I tell them that it is happening here. Okay. And also just when I hear from other forced marriage survivors that I'm giving them inspiration because I'm speaking up about what happened to me, whether it's like by writing my book or being on Twitter or on social media, that I'm actually talking about it. And so, that's the most rewarding part. And then the most challenging part, I believe, is like when I have people from my own culture, like the Indian culture, like they say, I didn't experience a forced marriage. And so, that's challenging to me. But what we have to remember is even within the Indian community, we're all different. So Punjabi people, they might raise their children in a different way. And like I like to say, and I know this isn't the correct math, but like, let's say 50% value education. They want their kids to have education, their daughters as well. They want them to be lawyers, doctors, judges, scientists. And yet the other 50%, they don't value education. They just want their girls to get married. And they want to train them from an early age at 7 or 8, like what happened to me, in how to cook and how to sew and how to clean. So one day you'll please a husband. And so the Indian parents that I've met in San Diego, where I live, they were actually born in India. And I feel like they had a different kind of advantage than what I had. So even though I was born in the UK, my family moved there a long time ago, and their minds are frozen in the past. So they're seeing Punjab the way it was before, and they're holding on to the customs and traditions of a long time ago. Yet the people in India who I now know in San Diego were born in India, and they're more modern. Like they grew up just having more freedom. They can go out to nightclubs like with their friends. They wore skirts and dresses. But yet in the UK, we weren't allowed to wear skirts and dresses. We were told that we must cover our legs. We must tie our hair up. We can't have our hair down. We can't cut our hair. So I feel like the girls that I've met now, the women who I know now in San Diego, they had a different upbringing. So when they say that they weren't forced into marriage, they had an arranged wedding, but they were able to choose their partners. They had 7 or 8 pictures shown to them. That wasn't my experience. I had 1 picture shown to me because my family was very strict. And I had 1 picture shown.
Excuse me, is it the barrier of education then, like just getting people to understand that it's still such an issue?
Yeah, it's just that I have to tell them that this is my experience in Bradford. It wasn't just my family, but there's so many other Punjabi girls all my age who were getting forced into marriage at the age of 14. And I think it's mind-blowing for them. So I like it that I'm even educating other Indian women.
Love that.
Thank you. I want to quickly go back to saying is that part of the reason why I do this is because it's my healing process. Because in my case, actually, it took me a long time to realize that my depression, my sadness, which was not obvious at all, was part of that was the reason, because I did not have enough opportunity to really grow and come into my own. I mean, I still remember in therapy in my 40s and 50s and hearing the 14-year-old voice within me saying, what about me? What about me? I mean, I was lucky because I really did have a successful life. And that's the difficult part too, because when people look at me and they go, what's wrong with you? You're lucky you got this and it doesn't matter. And one of the things what I say is that this is why gender equality and feminist movement is so important, is really giving a voice to anyone at any age to say who they are, to choose who they want to be and how they want to live. men get to do this, boys get to do this. Most of the time, again, I think we really have to be careful to say that it's both genders, but majority of women are definitely more taken advantage of than men, which is why we fight for gender equality. And the most important thing for me that was the hardest to get over was the lack of education. I was a straight A student and we had money to go to school. I did not understand why, and I thought the deal was that I was still gonna go to school. And of course, the Civil War happened, and then I had to immigrate, because that was in Lebanon. And again, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is that we really need to be protecting children. We really need to give voice to women at any age, any culture, any country, so that they can choose for themselves. And that's why I'm so happy to be doing this. 14,000 women want to come to New York to speak up. That's healing for me. I thank you all for that.
You have, the three of you have a global audience in this room, which is very meaningful. So if there was one thing you wanted everyone in this room, online now, people who see this later, one thing you want them to hear, what is that? Devinder, you can start.
That forced marriage is happening. Forced marriage is happening. It's happening everywhere. And it can happen when you're 18, like it happened to me. Even though I was shown that picture when I was 14, it doesn't mean when I was 18, I'm an adult and I can make my own decisions. Because when you grow up in a background where your parents are expecting, you to behave in a certain way, it doesn't matter what age you are. You could be 25, 26, you're still gonna have that guilt and pressure put upon you. And so anyone of any age can be forced into marriage. And we need to know that it's a human rights abuse and it has to stop. And yeah, it's happening everywhere and we all have to end it because it's, like I said, it's human trafficking as well.
The one thing I would say, just to reiterate again, is listen, give voice to women and girls in your lives, educate yourself and the people around you, and the laws do matter. I really want to come back to what Frady and Unchained does. It's so important. The laws do matter. Of course, Lebanon didn't have laws like that, or Armenia that still doesn't have laws. United States, I mean, it's crazy to think that we don't have laws to protect children. And there's free education here. Like, what is the problem? You're in love, you got pregnant, finish your high school first. Okay, that's all I'll say.
Laws are really, really important. And we need to understand that these things happen in community and they happen subtly and they happen right in front of our eyes. So breathe, notice the person next to you and ask.
And who do you said it's crazy that it's happening. And it does. It seems like something I can't even believe we're here talking about this. So many people don't know that it is even an issue we have to talk about. So to everyone in this room, we're like, yes, of course. Who needs to wait till 2023? Let's end it tomorrow. It seems right to us. But what pushback have you guys received out in the world, out in the real world outside of this room?
One of the biggest pushbacks that I actually see is that there's so many issues out there, aren't they? Like, this world really needs a lot of help in a lot of ways. The other thing I fight for is demilitarization. Now, do I want early marriage to end, or do I want to stop all military spending? You know what? We can do both, right? I mean, don't tell me one is more important than the other, because it's interconnected. In my world anyway, in my work, that's the pushback. It's like, what's more important to solve right now? There's enough of us. And one other thing I want to say, and then I won't say another word. It's so important to speak up. It really is very important to speak up. I forgot my second point, but I'll take the mic later. I got emotional.
And the other thing I want to add is that child marriage was outlawed in the UK just last year. So they banned child marriage by raising the marriage age to 18 there, but it's still happening here. And even though 11 states have now passed the marriage age to 18, I feel like we're still 10 steps behind the UK and we need to catch up. Why hasn't it been banned in every single state here? Unchained at Last is doing a great job, and I know that we're going to get there with their help, and it needs to happen. And also forced marriage was criminalized in the UK about 7 years ago. And again, we're behind with that here. It's only happened in like maybe 12 states here. So what's going on here in the US? We need to catch up.
The pushback is it doesn't affect that many people. It's not such a big deal. It's just those people, those, whoever they are. And there is a blind spot because we can, because this is what we do in the States. We close our eyes. We cover our ears. We choose not to see.
What has been the biggest struggle for yourself, or what struggles do you see as the biggest struggle for survivors coming out of a forced marriage or coming out of a community that pressures marriage?
Education, by far. Footsteps, I don't know our numbers now, but I myself have spoken to over 300 people for sure in the past, I don't know, few years, not even since 2013. Education, money is by far, people don't know. In Footsteps, which is just for people to know, Footsteps is an organization that helps people leave ultra-Orthodox community in primarily New York, but somehow in 2020, when the pandemic hit, we became national. And so that happened. The ultra-Orthodox schools in New York that get government funding do not give an education. The boys get a 2nd to 3rd grade level of education here in New York, and the girls, if they're lucky, get a 7th or 8th grade level of education. And so education and being able to make a living is by far the biggest hurdle that people have to go through. And the other is getting married so young means you having a ton of kids. I was 23 with 3 kids under the age of 5 with barely a high school diploma. And now what?
So the biggest struggle that I have right now is after I wrote my book, which I released in November 2021, I had to speak up. I had to break the silence because my whole life growing up in the UK, my family always instilled in me that we don't need to speak about things that are happening in the family home. We don't need to tell anybody outside. And so that instilled in me a culture of staying silent. So even when I escaped my forced marriage after just 6 weeks of being married, whenever I met different people and they asked me if I'd had an arranged marriage, I used to just say yes, but I didn't elaborate because I always kept it secret. I listened to that inner voice that my mom instilled in me. And I finally have learned that I have to break the silence. I have to tell my story. I have to release myself and give myself the freedom to be my true, authentic self. And, but one of the prices that I had to pay, unfortunately, is after I released my book in 2021, my own family disowned me, which, was not a surprise because I knew that when my mom realized that I was speaking up in 2019, when I first started telling my story, my mom learned about it and she stopped speaking to me. But my brother and my sisters still talk to me. But as soon as I released the book, they all stopped speaking to me. So that really hurts because I'm telling my story to spread awareness. It's not to become rich or anything like that. It certainly isn't. I mean, who would want their own family to stop, supporting them, to stop interacting with them? Nobody would want that. And so I didn't do this, to be cruel to my mom. And, my sisters say to me, why are you doing this to our mom now? This happened to you like 30 years ago. Why tell your story now? She's getting old. But, do I wait? And do I wait till I'm 80 years old to tell my story? I feel like people need to benefit from hearing my story today. If I can help one other person, to prevent them from happening what happened to me, I feel it will be worth it. And so unfortunately, yes, I don't have my family, but do I regret doing what I did? No. I think what I did the right thing. I do regret that I don't have my family's support right now. I regret that. But I also feel like my family's suffering too. Like they need to realize that I love them and I've forgiven them, but I will never forget what happened to me. And I feel like if that's how they want to be, then, be it, I can't change that.
Thank you for sharing that. What was this?
Your biggest struggle as a survivor, what you see as survivor's biggest struggle.
Yeah, obviously everybody saw me go like this about education. I'm always so jealous of anyone who was educated in a normal way, went to high school and went to college, even master's degrees. I finally have my undergraduate, but it made finally. And it just makes me feel like I know I'm smart. I've achieved so much without education. I get it. In the old days, people didn't go to school at all. But this is now, right? I just don't understand why that had to happen to me. The interesting part is that I really, it's funny it's really cool to be with other people, survivors, and hearing other stories. My mom actually was very helpful in getting my divorce and moving away, and she still supports me. But it's funny because I keep thinking, well, luckily most of my in-laws and my family do not follow CSW. So maybe they don't know how much I talk about this, and maybe that's why they still talk to me. But the bottom line is that it is my voice, it is my life, it is my body, and that's what it comes down to. It really doesn't matter what the bottom of the story is, like when I started or where I would end. Everybody has a right, and we need to make sure that their rights, they're educated enough to know their rights, because I really didn't know that either. It took me 20 years to actually tell myself the story, because when I first got married, I definitely had a story that I got married at 17 and he was 27, and we've traveled the world and we had a good time. But the truth is that wasn't the story. I made up a story that was good enough for me to live with. And then 20 years later, through therapy, is when I learned, wait a minute, that's not what happened. 1976, you start doing the math and then you realize something's not right. But at the end of the day, you have to own your own story. You have to write your own story. You have to create your own story. And every single human being has the right to that.
Yes. Bonnie said, if not me, then who? And so I would say, if not us in this room, if not us on Zoom, then who? And the question that I want to ask you all is, what can we in this room do? When we leave this room, what do we take away? What do we implement? What's the most important thing we can do? What can we do to support the three of you, to support Unchained at Last, but to support all people out there who are facing forced marriage?
First, educate yourself. Realize that this is a problem. So few Americans do. Second, tell people. Write to your congresspeople, senators. Let them know that we want to end child marriage, because that is the first step to fixing this. And then find out the organizations that do this work, support them either financially or with your time. Every single organization needs help. Nonprofits are underfunded, understaffed. Find out what you can do and do it. What I always say is, find your passion. The world is so broken, as you said, there's so many things. Find the one thing that makes you say, hey, this is the one thing I can do. And even if it's one thing, if every person does one thing, we change the world together. We really do.
And I would say it's exactly what Hanny said. Yeah, we all need to write to, write to your legislators, demand an end to child marriage, that the marriage age be raised to 18. Even though I was married at age 18, I still feel 18 is way too young. I think the marriage age should actually be raised to 21 or 22. I'm happy right now if it will be raised to 18. That's a start, but again, I think it's way too young, because when I got married at 18, the day before, it doesn't make a difference. One day doesn't make a difference. So the day, like when I turned 18, does it mean that I'm an adult all of a sudden? Like from a week earlier when I was 17? No, you don't mature that quickly. So we need to do whatever we can to raise the marriage age, raise it to 18. And, we've got to get behind the movement. Everybody should support Unchained at Last. They're making a great stride in 11 states have raised that marriage age to 18 now. And if it wasn't for their hard work, and this wouldn't have happened. So do whatever you can, join chain-ins, write to your legislators, and we all need to be part of ending this problem. And we shouldn't wait to 2030 either. Why not end it today? This year.
I hate to be redundant. Donate to Unchained, volunteer at Unchained, because we are in the Unchained event, and this is very important. And I really do agree with everything, so I don't want to repeat. I do want to report to my next session, but I really want to give you this gift of really empowering yourselves, making yourselves, it doesn't matter at what age. I'm 62 years old. I feel like at 60, my life started. I mean, I was divorced at 50, but that's not the point. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what, we are human beings with rights. So empower yourselves, hold yourself and your head high up, and really make sure that these stories are heard, and fight for everyone's rights along with yours. Thank you.
I think we have time for questions. Yes, I would love to open it up to some questions.
And I have some questions on Zoom as well. Sarah, who's actually a great friend of ours and a survivor, she has a question specifically for Hootie. She said, thank you for sharing your confusion over the abuse. What was the moment you decided to leave and why?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. You think it happens over, to me, it felt like it was just one moment. I was in therapy to help my child who was learning disabled and was having some issues. I went to therapy for the child, and that's when I discovered the numbers I was talking about, that I was lying to myself because I had whatever. And it was like, what? So yeah, it could be a moment that just can bring everything to the front of the brain. I hope that answers the question. And then it was, of course, it took 10 years after that moment. It's never an overnight. It's always a process, and I'm still living it and loving every minute of it.
Some people talked about how in their country, child marriage had been made illegal, but it still occurs. Can you speak a little bit about your reactions or advice about that?
So I know.
Ah.
Okay, sorry, I keep holding it too low. So I know last year, the child marriage age was raised to 18 in the UK. And I've been reading on social media that it's still happening. And yeah, even if we do raise the marriage age, throughout the world to 18, there's going to be places even in India, it's happening there. It's going to happen in the UK. No matter what happens, people are going to find a way. They're going to take their kids abroad, whether it's to India, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan. They're going to take them there and get them married, or they're going to do it and get away with it. So basically, we have to just through education, we have to get out there and tell people this is wrong. Let kids be kids. Kids should be playing with dolls. not being brides or grooms. This is wrong. There's no rush for kids to get married. They can wait till they're 18 or 21. So we just have to, like, with education, and I believe like schools need to be doing a better job. How come teachers aren't like standing up in front of the classrooms talking about child marriage, human trafficking, forced marriage? Like, these are subjects that should be taught in the classrooms.
The question was, what would you tell someone who is in or who is facing a forced marriage?
Slow it down. We usually can't tell people to stop. It's really dangerous and it's hard. But if you slow it down, then you can go get the help. Yes, send a call or email Unchained. Yes.
I'm just gonna shout and I'll ask Ashley to repeat it. Someone just wants to know how they can help their own community.
How do they help in their own communities?
Can they say?
Can you say more? I think it probably seems overwhelming, like even, but I think this goes back to what we said before when I was asking what any one individual can do. I mean, it can even seem overwhelming to go out and find a new organization, to find what legislator, to your congressman, to any of that. And that's why I do think that Unchained at Last being here and being the resource, they are your place to start if you don't know. No, they might not have an office in your community, but they are working in every single state. And so I think that that would be a beautiful place to start. And I'm sure if they're, I'm sure there's plenty to do with it Unchained. And then I'm sure they can get you connected even with more local organizations if you're really trying to move the needle in your state.
Can I just quickly also respond? Because it's also something that we've been talking about in preparation of the forum, and it applies to this one too. And you just reminded me by saying, slow it down. Because we're fighters. I mean, human beings are fighters. We don't give up. We keep fighting. And sometimes it hurts us because we fight so hard. But it's so important to really just chill. Do yoga meditation too, and just, but also like in your own community, one of the best things I learned recently is distraction to get attention. It's part of de-escalation too, because we're all facing all of this, the Palestine, Israel, the anti-abortion, for abortion. There's all kinds of polarization in who's right and who's wrong. And at the end of the day, I just always go back to the human being and the individual. For me, the best thing that ever happened to me, my brother one day said, "You deserve to be happy." And I was like, such a simple sentence. I was happy on the outside because I had everything, but he noticed that I really wasn't happy. So if you see somebody that you doubt, you don't know them well enough to even bring up the question, are you okay in your marriage? Can you ask that to your neighbor? No, you can't. But you can also just say very simple sentences to start the conversation. It's so important to start the conversation. And the last thing I want to say is that this also comes with domestic abuse and all of that. Sometimes there's a ring the bell campaign in India, actually. It started years ago, where if you hear something in the next door neighbor screaming, yelling, plates being thrown, ring the bell and ask for a cup of sugar, distract them, just say something to get somebody's attention away from the pain so that they start thinking in a different way.
Well, can we have a round of applause for our extraordinary panel? I just really want to thank each of you, the survivors, for sharing your story. First of all, for surviving what happened should never have happened to any of you. thank you for using your traumatic story as a way to help others. And thank you, Ashley, for using your incredible platform to raise awareness of this issue. And thank you, all of you, for being here today. If you want to learn more about forced and child marriage in the United States because you want more depressing information, go to Unchained, or you want to take Hootie's advice and donate, which we always appreciate, unchainedatlast.org. You can leave your cards if you want, because we reuse them, reduce, reuse, recycle. And I will leave you by once again saying the United States and the whole world has promised to end forced and child marriage by year 2030. We are running out of time, but everyone here, I'm sure you're going to join me in insisting that the world keep its promise. We're watching you, world. Thank you.